Canada looks to build a stronger and more competitive economy. Questions around productivity, investment, and growth have never been more important. In this episode, we explore the findings of the report, Time to Execute, Canada's Crucible Moment, and discuss what it will take to unlock Canada's economic potential. To help us with the discussion is Anne McLellan. The Honourable Anne McLellan is co-chair of the Coalition for a Better Future, a national coalition of more than 140 organizations focused on advancing sustainable and inclusive economic growth in Canada. She is a former Deputy Prime Minister of Canada and has held several senior cabinet portfolios, including public safety, health, justice, and natural resources. And she joins us today. Welcome, Anne.
Thank you, David. Great to be here. And let me say, on behalf of my colleague, Lisa Raitt, and I, we're delighted to have the opportunity to talk a little bit about our report.
The report that you released, I was so impressed with the number of statistics that is involved in this report. So first of all, let's understand what was the impetus for the report? Why did you decide this is the time that we need to release this?
Well, actually, we started 5 years ago now, just coming out of the worst of COVID. A group of people across the country decided it was important to take the lessons we'd learned from COVID and build back better, which was, of course, an expression used by President Biden and others at that time. So we have released these reports, David, over in each of the past 5 years. And we released our report in March of 26, building off largely a picture of where the Canadian economy was in the year 2025, right? And what this report tells us, and we call it Time to Execute, is that actually we have a government in Ottawa, Mr. Carney, who is absolutely saying many of the things that our report's been talking about for 5 years. And he and the provinces seem to be working reasonably well together. But at the end of the day, we have to execute. We have to take everything. For example, let's take internal trade, David. There was great discussion a year ago about reducing those barriers, right? And it's still out there as an important public policy issue. But we've got to get more energy behind that because we are leaving tens of billions of dollars every year in GDP on the table because of those internal trade barriers. So that's just one example of where, in fact, we've got to get the momentum and actually do that which we all know has to be done. It's time to execute.
And on that topic, many businesses have said to me, it's easier for me to do business with a company in Europe than it is to do business with a company in British Columbia, which I know is true. Yeah. I find it painful to think that we are leaving so many of our own internal trade dollars on the table just because we can't get along with ourselves. Now, the Premier of Ontario has said, hey, we've taken down all the interprovincial trade barriers. It's not us, it's them. So help us understand.
It's always them, David.
It's always them.
It's always somebody else. But look, I do give the provinces and the Government of Canada credit that this is a topic that has been in discussion for the past year in a more meaningful way than before. Each province is taking a slightly different approach to how they reduce their particular internal trade barriers. That obviously takes time. The federal government has, in fact, as I understand it, removed their trade barriers. But the problem is most of them are interprovincial. They're not Government of Canada trade barriers. I see that the Prime Minister and the Premiers are meeting today. I am hoping that this will be a topic of conversation today. Okay, where are we at? And let's drive this. This is something that's within our control. Because, David, Business hates uncertainty. Right now, what have we got? Geopolitical uncertainty, largely driven by the President of the United States. Okay, so there are things outside our control. Interprovincial trade barriers are completely within our control. That is something we can do as Canadians, as provinces and the Government of Canada to increase our GDP. So let's deal with those.
And when we talk about those interprovincial barriers and your tagline on your report, it's time to execute.
Right.
What, in your opinion, what are some of the big sticking points between the provinces and why they can't just, we've got all these issues going on with our biggest trading partners south of the border. Let's just sit around the table, join hands, sing Kumbaya, and let's get along, at least in the interim.
Well, I think a lot of them are legacy issues, historical, like alcohol. Let's put that to one side.
Yes.
But in terms of, there will always be winners and losers, right? There will be truckers who are concerned if rules change, they will lose. If they're truckers in Alberta or British Columbia, whatever the case may be. There are businesses, again, who are afraid that they may be one of the losers. And that's why, if you remove these provincial trade barriers, you do have to identify, just as we did when NAFTA came in, right? Who are the winners? Who are the losers? Let's make sure if we can help some of the losers, let's do that, but let's move forward, right? So that is what has to happen here. And look, I'm not, and Lisa and I would never suggest to people that this is an easy, you snap your fingers, and because there are winners and losers. And you will be disrupting certain aspects of the Canadian economy. You have to figure out whether that disruption is deserving, if you like, of financial or other assistance to make the transition to the new world. But it's just something we have to get on with, and it's completely within our control. But that is actually, David, only one of the things that's standing in the way of the growth of the Canadian economy.
Yes.
In our report, we continue to accentuate the lack of private sector investment. And the Prime Minister has, in fact, flagged this as well. If you look at our key metrics around what the private sector is doing in the Canadian economy, we are falling way behind countries to which we would compare ourselves, and private sectors in those countries in relation to research and development, in relation to investments in machinery and equipment, and in relation to the training of the private sector's workers. Those are the three major things that drive productivity increases. And those are the things that we're falling behind in relation to our key competitors in the G7 and beyond. Those are all things that the private sector is going to have to acknowledge and we have to start to see greater investment in those three areas by the private sector.
And I'd like to draw your attention to a part of your report, and you just touched on it there about investment in Canada, and not just necessarily private investment, but we have massive, massive pension funds in Canada that do not invest in Canada. They invest outside of Canada. So how do we convince these massive private pension funds that Canada is the place we should invest, not outside?
Well, you have to have investments of a size, I think, that they would be interested in. A lot of them invest in things like toll highways, airports, other kinds of physical infrastructure around the world. That's just one example, but it's an important one. It's interesting, David, that the Prime Minister is holding an international investment summit in September, and actually our major pension plans will be there, along with other pension plans from around the world and other kinds of investors, not only pension plans. And in fact, I think it is clear that the Prime Minister has probably been trying to encourage the Maple 8, the big pension plans in this country, to think about what's available to invest in here at home. And this relates to one of the things that we talk about in our report, which is the importance of infrastructure, right? We have to renew a lot of our infrastructure. For example, we see that happening in the Port of Montreal. It's got to happen in the Port of Vancouver. It's got to happen at our airports. We've got to build out our highways, trucks, right? Our railways. There are huge infrastructure potential investments to ensure that we can move product to market in an efficient way. We can move people by air to where they need to go. So that I think that there will be projects going forward of the size and kind that our major pension funds should want to invest in. I am hopeful that we will see Canadian pension funds turning more of an eye to what might be available here in Canada. But you know what? To have private sector proponents want to build these projects, you do have to have the right regulatory regime. You have to have a high degree of certainty. These are hugely expensive projects. People have to go to the capital markets or investment funds, pension plan funds, and convince these investors that there's a reasonable return on investment, right?
If you are interested in seeing the report that has been produced, I highly recommend it. It's an incredible read. Tons of, if you like statistics like I do, you
Yes.
will really love this report. Check out the Coalition for a Better Future and look at that report. If you like this video, give it a like. If you enjoyed the content, smash that subscribe button and get notified of the next episode. Thanks to the Honorable Anne McLellan for being my guest today. This is David Wojcik for MBOT TV Zoomcast, wishing you continued success in your business.
Thank you.